Good afternoon, everybody, and a very warm welcome to the Echoes Cascading Grants Core 1 Q&A session. With over 364 people registered, and when we were just letting everybody in, over 200 people, and I see there's already 236 people in this room. We're very happy with the participation and maybe just a slightly bit overwhelmed, but this is brilliant. This is what the Collaborative Cloud for Cultural Heritage is about. So we'll just let people are still coming into the room right now, into this virtual room, but it's wonderful that we've got such a wide participation. So I'll just let I can see all the numbers going up as people coming in. Just wait a couple of seconds more while everybody is in the room. All the numbers are coming in as we speak. So a very warm welcome. And while we're coming in, today the Echoes team is represented by myself, Sally Chambers, and in the other screen we had Johan Oman and Rachel Summers-Miles as well from the Netherlands Institute of Sound and Vision. So a very warm welcome. And we've got other members of the team from both communications and the technology team on standby as well to answer your questions. So are we doing okay? I think that, the numbers are still going up as people comes in. So let's just maybe wait a couple more minutes. And just to say, before as people coming in, we'll be using the chat function rather than the Q&A function for here. So we'll be keeping using the chat function. So we'll preempt some of the questions in a second, but please use the chat function for the questions. Right, we're at 251. No, people are still coming in. And we should have put some music on. So let's just give it a couple more seconds before we start to give everybody the chance to come into the room. Yes, the recording will, I just saw the recording will be shared afterwards as well. Yes, thank you very much for that question, Diana. Right, we've got a lot to get through, so I think the numbers of people coming in are slowing down, so we're already at 254. So maybe if we take over to the next slide and we can introduce the session outline for today. So a very warm welcome again, and it's fantastic. And this is what all the Collaborative Cloud for Cultural Heritage is about. So the session agenda for this afternoon. So we'll start with setting the scene and providing you a bit of context and the scope for Core 1, which, as you all know, is focusing on data. We'll take you through the application process and the key dates. Then Rachel will give us a submission platform walkthrough so you can see what that will like. And then we'll dive into a little bit of the detail of the application content and the questions that we think in the application form that may be a bit more tricky. And then what we've done, we'll go through the key questions and answers. So it's been brilliant. We've had over 100 questions pre-submitted. So that was really helpful for us. And what we've tried to do is to cluster them. And actually, they helped us prepare this presentation. So we've been able to sort of, as we prepare the presentation and take you through the walkthrough, we can sort of go through and answer some of those questions. There will be a question and answer session at the end for anything we haven't been able to cover in the presentation. And any questions that we aren't able to answer today will be consolidated and published in a frequently asked questions in the next couple of weeks. And as we've just said, the session is being recorded and will be made online available afterwards. So I think with further ado, let's move on to the next slide, please. Thanks, Rachel. So if there is one thing that you take away from this session, and please, if you have a smartphone with you, you can scan the QR code. please read the guide for applicants. It's a nice, well, we hope it's a nice guide that answers many of your questions. It's not that long and it is really, really valuable. We've linked it at many parts of the website. If I was in a room now, I would ask everyone to put their hands up. How many people have actually read the guide for applicants? So really, please do that, because we've taken time to try and great, Valerie. Thank you very much. We've taken the time to really put this together, and it should be able to answer most of the questions. So if you follow the guide, that should really help you. So on the next slide, thanks, Rachel. Just to give you now a little bit of context of where this call is sitting and the scope of the call. So why are we doing this call in the first place, and who are we doing it for? So I think, oops, there we go. If you could click on the slide again, please. Thank you. So collaborative is really important in the European Collaborative Cloud for Cultural Heritage. So we want to be inclusive as possible and really to stimulate the uptake and use of the collaborative cloud by a diverse range of cultural heritage institutions. So it's really not people. We want to make sure that cultural heritage institutions that may not have been had access to European funding before, that are able to apply and collaborate with the cloud. So let's go in the next slide and take you into a little bit more detail so we can see the overview. Because as you know, and we'll come to that again at the second, is each of the beneficiaries or each partner who applies for ECHO's cascading grants can only apply for up to €60,000 across each of the 3 calls. So that's why obviously we're going to focus more on the data call today, but it could be that your ideas that you've come up with may be more relevant for the call 2 or call 3. So that's why we just want to give you the idea, but we will focus on the call 1, the data call, just now. So as you know, and I think if we can click through onto the various different parts, thank you. This is the call that was published in February, and we'll go through the key dates with you in a second. There will be 12 projects funded on this call and €60,000 per project. So this is the current call we're talking about. When things move forward quite quickly, so call 2, engagement and collaboration, that will be published just after the summer break in September 2025. And this will be 20 projects of €30,000 each. And then call 3, data and vertical applications. And vertical applications will make more sense as we move later on, but that is related to software that can be integrated and workflows that can be integrated with the cloud at a more technical level. But we'll ask in call 3 for another ingestion of data projects, but also these sort of more workflow-like applications. And there 18 projects will be funded and €60,000 per project. And that call will be published in January 2027. So not next year, the year afterwards. And we'll come back that into the FAQ. But one of the key questions has been, how can we integrate with the cloud when the cloud isn't there yet? And this is why call 3 by 2027, the cloud will be a lot more developed, and that's where we'll have more technical levels of integration. So on the next slide, please. Thank you. And I think now I'm going to hand over to Johan, who will go into a little bit more detail about the application process itself. Thanks, Johan.
Thanks so much, Sally. Yes, the application process. In designing the application process, we were keen to make sure that we do this as efficiently as possible, and also to make sure that giving also the competition and the available budget, we thought it was important to make a 2-stage process, meaning that in the first stage, we expect people to provide let's say, a short proposal, and only a limited amount of projects will be then asked to expand this into a full proposal. In this way, we think this is, the best balance of everyone's time. So the way that this is going to work is displayed on this figure here. The short proposal, this is what we expect consortia to propose by May 15 using the application system that will be demoed in a sec. So after May 15, there will be an eligibility check where we will assess if the partners and consortia that are proposing actually fall within our eligibility criteria. If this is not the case, then people will be notified. If it is the case, then the proposals will be forwarded to the review board consisting of a number of experts that will look at each of the proposals. So for 24 of the proposals, we will invite them to go to the next round. That means basically that in the full proposals at full proposal submission time, out of the 24 projects that will be submitted, half of them, i.e. 12, will be actually granted to start their projects. So again, stage 1, internal review. If you get selected to be part of the 24, then you will be asked to expand on the proposal that you submitted in stage 1. And we are thinking about this will be like a 5,000 word proposal, which is approximately double the amount of words that we are expecting in the first stage. Then we do another peer review, and in this peer review, we will be also working with external experts that will be looking at the various proposals. And for the 12, let's say, winners or grantees, they will be then invited to enter a grant agreement process, and then they can start their projects. Projects will be are expected to be 12 months, and during the process of the to the actual running of the projects, we will be assessing the progress against set milestones. And after the project is finalized, there will be also obviously some administrative work to be done to basically wrap this up fully. But this is basically the process that we foresee. Next slide, please. And these are the dates connected to it. And so stage 1, May 15. The portal will be for applications will be opened already next week, but then the deadline for making those submissions is the 15th of May. Then we will forward the outcome of the internal review process by July, and then we expect so the full proposals for those 24 selected proposals to be submitted in September. And then the final, say, second stage peer review will happen in mid-October. So we, give considering the time it will take to write a grant agreement and to get it signed, we think that project will start by January the latest. Yeah, and I think that's yeah. So now let's move to the submission platform walkthrough.
And just while Rachel's getting ready to. Oops, I think it's echo. Thank you. Just while Rachel's getting ready to share the submission platform, what we're going to do is I've noted all the questions coming already. So far, many of those are going to be answered during the presentation. So I'll just pick the one from Kirsten, for example. It's 60,000 maximum across all 3 cores for an individual partner institution. We'll come back to each of those and we'll check to see if there's any that haven't been answered at the end, because we've gone through and hopefully pre-answered many of the questions that we will get. So Rachel, back over to you.
Cheers. Thanks, Sally. Sorry, we have a double audio situation happening. So I'm going to take just a few minutes to walk you all through the submission platform that we're developing and that will be released for everyone to start working on Tuesday. I'm going to start first showing you with some slides, and then we'll switch over to a sort of a small live demo. So when the platform is opened, you'll come to a landing page where you can click between stage 1 currently, which will take you to the applications, the application that you can start building. As you'll see right now, stage 2 is currently not available because we're not in stage 2 yet. So once you click on stage 1 proposal, it'll ask you to apply. If you already have a Funding Box ID, so Funding Box is the partner that we're working with to build the platform. If you have one, you can use your Funding Box ID information to log in, to access your own area through which you can build your application. If you don't, you'll need to sign up, which is super straightforward. Email, first name, last name, username, password. You get a confirmation email. And then you'll be able to enter your, let's say, your profile and start building your application. I'm just going to switch over now to here. Give me 1 second. Sorry, everyone. Oops. I love watching people do technological things. Sorry, guys, just give me 1 sec. I'll be right with you. Here we go. So can you see? Yeah. So here is the platform that we're working with. You'd enter stage 1 proposal, click on there, and then you would get to, sorry, there you go. You get to your proposal section. So when you enter this section, you will not have any proposals available for you yet. But I have them right here because I've been working on them and testing the system. So let's see, you would go through here. Sorry, it's being silly today. Okay, here we go. So we'd start a new application by clicking on this button. And then here you have the overview of all the content that has to be inputted. All of this content is already available in the guide for applicants. So if you look in the guide for applicants that Sally shared the link to earlier, you'll actually see all of this information outlined already in terms of exactly what's expected of you. And here it's really intuitive. You can click, say, fill. Here you can start filling in your basic information. I'm just going to take a moment to go over a couple points that are really important. First, again, we really ask you to read the guide for applicants first to make sure you're answering the information accurately. You will need to answer all 9 sections of the application to be able to submit it. This also includes uploading your organization's legal status evidence, which we'll talk a little bit about what that means in terms of the kinds of documents we're looking for. And then also we have a basic budget sheet in the budget section that we're going to ask you to fill in and then upload. And then some important notes about using the application platform. So once you've submitted it, you'll actually be able to continue to edit your application up until the deadline. So if, for example, you want to add something else or change any information, you'll be able to do so through the duration until May 15th. Also a friendly reminder that you need to hit save at the bottom of each section in order for the content to be saved. If you build out that content and then navigate away before saving, that content will be lost, which is also why we really recommend, like working in most online platforms, that you work in another word processing program first to develop your content and then copy and paste that into the different sections as you work through it. And as we said, again, those sections are fully outlined in the guide for applicants already. So you can already start working on what we expect of you in the application before the platform itself opens. Also a small note that the platform uses maximum character counts instead of word counts. So when the platform opens, let's just double check against the work that you've done. And it will cut you off at the end. So you won't be able to input any more details until, it won't be able to input any more details after you've reached the max character count. So when you're building out your application, you can start by filling in your project title, your project acronym, and then also, of course, we want to see who your consortium members are. So your partner name, meaning your organization, country, and then the type of organization. Obviously, the question around what constitutes a cultural heritage institution is one of our conversation points for today. But so you input the type of institution, and then you can keep on continuing to add partners for as many as you have. I'm not going to go over all of the content today because we'll sort of answer any content specific questions in the Q&A section. But again, it's very straightforward. Here at the top, we have methodology. This describes what we expect, which is already in the guide for applicants. And then you fill in your information. I'm just going to put an X there for speed, and then save and continue. And now you'll see that I've actually already updated and completed this section. So as I go through the whole application, all of these will be updated to say that they've been completed. And as you'll see now, I'm actually not able to submit the application yet because not all of these sections have been filled in. And also a really important point or tip is that you can actually export the application PDF at any moment. So you can do it whilst you're in the middle of building out your application, or you can do it when you're done. And then also here, for example, we have you upload documents for your organization's legal status, and have you upload documents for the draft budget sheet, which you'll be able to download and use. And again, it's very simple. And then last but not least, I'm just gonna go here just to show you, oopsies, sorry, I have two different, I have the one that I'm building out right now, and then the one that's gonna be available soon. So let's just say that I've finished completing all of my application information. You can see here, I have tick boxes, right, across the whole, see now it went weird again. Anywho, so once, it's because I'm working between two different platforms. I have a colleague here who's speaking with me. So once this is all filled in, there'll be a button at the bottom that says submit this application, which will be very clearly evident, and you'll be able to do so. And then you get a confirmation at the top that says this application was successfully submitted. And you'll also get a confirmation email saying that the application was successfully submitted and that you can in fact continue to edit it through until the deadline. So I'm going to close this out now. Sorry for the tech fumbles at the beginning. My tabs got all weird. I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to put up the presentation again.
And maybe Rachel, just before we go into
if you have
that,
any questions about the platform in the process of this session, let me know. It's super straightforward and really intuitive. Yeah, and we look forward to seeing all the work that you guys put through.
Great, Rachel. There's been a couple of actually practical questions that have come in while you were presenting. So, for example, can multiple persons edit one application at the time, for example? And another one that came in. So I answered the one related to the number of characters. So it chops you off. So this is what Rachel said at the beginning. It's ideal to be editing the platform in another word processing application outside the platform, and then to paste it in. It doesn't give you the character count as you go along, but it basically chops you off when you've reached the character count level. So it doesn't tell you how many character counts you've got left, but it chops you off. But we do definitely say, please edit it in another application. Does the section on the red star, so how will you be able to submit it without? So basically you have to fill in each of the different sections, and then you can press submit before the deadline, but you are able to edit the application afterwards. So if you want to submit and then edit, you can edit it right up to the deadline as well. We were testing whether multiple persons can edit one application. We haven't finished testing that yet, so we can put that in the FAQ. You can share your application with other members, and we have tested that as well. But at the moment, we would suggest that one person edits the platform themselves. So if you've got somebody coordinating it, copy over your application into the platform and just give it one person to actually do it in the platform, but you can, other people can look at it as well. I don't know if it's possible to briefly share that, how to add people.
So just to say, can you hear me? So just to say that you can add collaborators really simply by adding someone's email address. Let me see if I can pull it up. And so what happens is when you add their email address, they get an invitation to edit. Here, let me just pull this up. So I'll just say here, let's say I'm editing this application as yeah. And also because we're looking for collaborative projects here, right? So that's why you can also have collaborations, and you can be involved in different projects. That's why there's also the possibility to be collaborators on different projects. So say I wanted to add a collaborator, I would just click add collaborator and then invite them via email. They'll get an invitation in their inbox, and then from there they'll get a link where they can immediately access the application. So make sure that you only share with people that you truly want to collaborate with, because they'll be able to immediately have your access to your application. Also to say that like the platform is really stable, but we all know what happens when we're busy and we forget to save. So that's just why we're really encouraging people to work collaboratively in a document, in a word processing document, and then copy the content over. Were there any other platform questions, Sally, that I missed while I was?
Well, it's a kind of platform question, but it's related to, can I fill the proposal on behalf of my project leader? So that's when maybe one of your bosses has to officially submit the application. So yes, that's how the collaboration can work. So if you would like to support one of the more senior members of the team to do that, yes, that's perfectly possible. And then and I think Johan will go into a little bit more detail about that regarding the sort of institutional buy-in and the legal side. And we will come up, I see there's many questions related to the collaboration. We'll come back into that in a little bit more detail. Technically, yes, a single institution can apply, but we're really looking at impact and the impact of on the wider cultural heritage. So we'll come back to that at the moment. So just think it is the collaborative cloud for cultural heritage. So people can apply as individuals or individual institutions, but collaborative is important, I would say. Okay, so now that Rachel has sort of given an overview of the actual sort of like technical details of how you submit the application via the platform, what we're going to do is dive into a couple of the questions that we think may be a little bit more tricky in the content of the application, and try and answer as many questions of those as possible. So if we could go on to the first question, please. Thanks, Rachel. So, of course, this is the data call. So call one of the ECHO's cascading grants is related to data. So let's go through in a little bit more detail about the data. So this you will find in the call for applicants, but also in the platform yourself. So I think it's really important that we're thinking about the use of cultural heritage data. So when you're thinking about the data sets that you would like to contribute to this proposal, we should outline the use scenario for the data set. So for example, which community or communities will use the data set? What will they use it for? And examples could be facilitate academic research, enhance educational materials, enable virtual exhibitions. And also, what is the expected outcome at the end of the project? So what will be the results that will benefit the wider cultural heritage community? And I think how will the results benefit the wider cultural heritage community is really, really crucial. So really think about this. With this platform, Cultural Heritage Cloud is for the wide community. So how can we benefit that through the data that you're providing? And if there's one key principle, fair, so this findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, fair data interconnected with a concrete use case is the most important principle when thinking about contributing data to the Cultural Heritage Cloud. On the next slide, thanks, Rachel. We go into a little bit more detail again. So another questions that keep coming up. So proposers should describe the cultural heritage data set in detail. So one of the key questions is, what kind of cultural heritage? In principle, any type of digital cultural heritage can be submitted under this call. However, what is really important is you describe what kind of data sets you are submitting, and there are various different dimensions of how you can describe that. So, for example, the content. Is it archaeological finds, archival documents, manuscripts, newspapers, web archives? I won't go through the whole list here, but it's really important that you describe it. And how do you describe it in terms of time period, geographical coverage, or subject matter? And another thing, coupled with the FAIR principles, some of you may be aware of the CARE principles, and that's related to ethical considerations related to the data set. So we'd really want to have this described in a lot of detail. On the next slide, we'll go into a bit about the kind of technical description of the content and the data that you would like. So here you can see an overview of the technical details. These are the kind of things we would like you to describe. So the data type, is it digitized content? Is it born digital heritage? Is it intangible cultural heritage? What is the estimated size? Either, for example, the number of files or the number of cultural heritage objects per data set. Perhaps think about volume, for example, in megabytes or gigabytes, and the different file formats that you've been using for your cultural heritage data. So from JPEG to TIFF, XML, WARC for web archives, SVG for images, or even text. So think about describing the file formats as well. And this will come back in the Q&A session as well. Metadata formats. Obviously, in many different cultural heritage communities, you have existing metadata formats that you already use. So, of course, it's got to be interoperable with the Cultural Heritage Cloud, but we're very keen to hear about if you have existing formats in your community that you want to use. So tell us a bit about that and think about availability of that data and the quality of metadata. Also, in a similar way, vocabularies, ontologies, or schemas used in producing those data descriptions, do you have existing ones that you use? If so, could you share them with us? And this last one, the possibility of using the data set to train AI models. This is not a requirement, but if it is possible and you've already done some work in your institution on AI, please tell us about it as well. This is another question that came up quite a lot, and we'll go into a little bit more detail. Oops, sorry, can you just pop one back? Sorry, a little moment. The availability and licensing of data. One of the important things is ideally the data sets are already in a repository, a trusted digital repository, or available through an API, such as the Open Archives Initiative Protocol for Metadata Harvesting. SparkQL came up as well. So if it can be accessed via an existing API, please tell us about it and link to documentation if you have it. Licensing and IPR issues are very important, and we've had questions related to, are we using the Europeana data model and licensing framework? If you're using that, you please let us know about it. And I think that is all for the data bit, and we'll come back to the data Q&A at the end. So on the next slide, please. And this is another section. So this is 4 was the data section. Now we're moving into section 6 of the application platform and alignment with the Cultural Heritage Cloud. We'll come back to this in the Q&A session as well. And obviously it's quite difficult because the cloud doesn't exist. How can you align something that doesn't exist? And we'll go into that in a bit of more detail. But what's important in this stage 1 application is that we want a concept note. We want to say, what would you are interested in doing? So how would your project ideally like to make use of the Cultural Heritage Cloud? Of course, we've got to think about compatibility and interoperability. And one of the key aspects is, as Johan explained in the beginning, this is the step 1 application. And for those that get through to the step 2 application, the ECHOS team will be offering mentoring and providing more details about the actual technical and data interoperability to help you submit your stage 2 application. So this is more at the conceptual level. Obviously, we're building on existing data sets and existing work, so we'll come back to that in the Q&A session, but it's more about telling us, what do you do already, and what would you, in an ideal world, like the Cultural Heritage Cloud to do for you? Another aspect related to the alignment is think about your long-term availability of the data and having a clear plan for the sustainability. In the ECHOS project, this has been quite a lot of discussion around this, but we have the sources of the data, and then you'll use the data in the Cultural Heritage Cloud to perhaps process data. Where is your sustainability plan for the data after the end of the project? So it's really important to have a think about the long-term availability of your data. Now, passing over to Johan for the next section on, I think it's, yes, legal status and organizations.
Yeah, in order to make sure that we need proof that organizations that are applying do exist, and for this we would require you to submit evidence of this, and this could be, for instance, a copy from the Chamber of Commerce. It could be a listing in an official journal, statutes, just documentation that will help the evaluators assess the legal status of your organization. And we are aware that in different contexts, different countries, this might be a different document. If you are not clear about the document that you have is enough to provide evidence, then do reach out to us and we can help you assess if it is the case. I hope this is helpful. Yeah, then we so what Sally elaborated on a number of the fields that are in the application form, and already see it by doing so addressing quite a few questions that came that were forwarded to us by email over the last couple of weeks, and also in submitting in your submissions for this event. Next slide, please. But also now we would like to dive in a little bit deeper and looking at some of the sort of the reoccurring questions that were submitted in preparation for this event. So we have a number of themes that we would like to cover. Next slide, please. The first is eligibility, and we're receiving quite a lot of questions about this. There is a section on eligibility criteria on page 6 of the guide for applicants, but I think it's also good to start by general information on page 3, where we write submissions by consortia, and especially by interdisciplinary consortia that include CHIs, researchers, small and medium-sized enterprises, civil society actors, etc., are encouraged. So as Sally also mentioned, collaboration runs really through everything that Collaborative Cloud for Cultural Heritage stands for, and we do welcome these interdisciplinary consortia to apply to this goal. But in principle, and then this takes us to eligibility criteria. So again, it is in principle a single entity can apply, but I think it's evident that in the evaluation, reviewers will prioritize collaborative projects over individual applications. But this is something that you would need to, take a decision on yourself. Then it comes to the question about who can coordinate. So the scope of the grant scheme is about use by the cultural heritage institutions, and in effect, the coordinator of a project must be a CHI. That doesn't mean, obviously, that so for instance, if you are an NGO or a private entity and you would like to engage in this, then for instance, one way to go about it is to contact a museum or an archive library that you work with and ask that CHI to be the coordinator, or the other way around. We also imagine that there will be CHIs that will be reaching out to like other organizations in their ecosystem to collaborate. And again, the type of collaboration can be quite broad. So it could be, like I said, NGOs, it could also be private entities, it could be, we also expect quite a few universities to be part of a project, but the project should be coordinated by a CHI. One of the questions that we got is that there are quite a few examples where a research organization like a university is also home to a museum or a library. And then the question that arises is, can such a center or a lab or a single institution that is part of a bigger institution apply? So the bigger institution would not say count as a CHI, but the department would, looking at the definition that we provide. So in these cases, two things. Yes, if you are, let's say, a museum part of a university, you are eligible, but it is important that in the team composition, which is section 7 of the application form, you elaborate in clear terms your position within the organization. So it's clear for evaluators that you are, and again, in this example, that you are a museum that is part of a university, but it is the museum and the people working in the museum with the data from the museum that are coordinating the proposal. I hope that is sufficiently clear. All the partners are expected also to be like what's called?
Like a legal entity.
They also need to be legal entities. Yes. Yeah. Let's see. So the slides that you see now are actually literally the text on of section 2. But let's look at what other questions were connected to this in the past. Yeah, let's go to the next slide, please. We spoke about the deadline, so that's I hope that's clear. Also, Sally mentioned that organizations can apply to all the 3 calls, but in total, so across the 3 calls, the accumulated funding is limited to 60,000 euros. This is because of EU rules that we need to abide by. And then the last 2 bullet points. Yes, so this again, so the bullet about individual centers or labs when they are part of larger organizations. So for instance, if you are a research lab, but part of a, let's say, national research infrastructure, then the lab that you are in is a single entity. But again, it's the responsibility of the projects proposing to make sure that they check within their organizations, that they're not bidding on the same call that is, when it falls out of the rules that are published in our guide for applicants. And the 4th bullet point here relates very specifically to the beneficiaries of the ECHOS project. And obviously, it's the labs that are already receiving funding to do the work within the scope of ECHOS are not eligible for funding. This would be a big conflict of interest. The next slide is back to Sally. Thank you.
Brilliant. And we're making notes of the questions as they come in, and we'll answer them at the end. So we've got a couple that we won't answer. So for example, there's been several questions related to accessibility guidelines and visual impairment. So I'll come back to those at the end. So going into a little bit more detail, and this is one of the common questions that came up: how can we integrate with the Cultural Heritage Cloud if it doesn't exist yet? And there was also a question I saw in the chat: when will it be? It's an iterative process. So for example, we have milestones in the ECHOS project around month 18 for sort of first drafts of the platform, and then month 36. So over the next 5 years, it will be iteratively developed. And this is part of the process. But I think what is really important is that we want to ensure that the Cultural Heritage Cloud builds on and uses existing data sets, tools, and flows that you are all using already in your cultural heritage organizations. So it's about sharing what you do already and how you would like to use the Cultural Heritage Cloud. And conversely, I think we really want to sort of understand what the needs and the pressing needs of cultural heritage communities out there, because of course ECHOS is a project and we've got a lot of expertise in the project, but we need to understand what you need from the community. So it's a bit, that's why this is a concept note. We want to understand what you need so we can be flexible and adapt as far as possible what we're developing in ECHOS to move forward. In the FAQs that are already available on the ECHOS website, I think we need to just I've pulled out a couple of things from there. So, of course, projects need to take into account that the ECHOS architecture is evolving. So for those projects who are selected, again, we'll have the mentoring to help you with that as the ECHOS architecture develops. Interoperability of ECHOS going to take into account internationally known standards, community data standards as well. So if you work with common data formats, for example, REF, community data sets that you're using in your cultural heritage domain and related metadata models. And also when you're thinking about maybe you have application programming interfaces or APIs, make sure that they're open access and just share what you have already. Projects also should focus on modular designs. And for example, if you interface via APIs, think about REST APIs and also adaptable data models. And as we go along, we'll be providing more detailed integration guides as the platform develops. So that's another thing. Once you are a project in the thing, you will be mentored as well. And we'll make sure that you've got the latest information about integration guidelines as we go along. On the next slide, we've got kind of related questions as well related to licensing. So data access and licensing. So here, just a reminder, in availability and licensing is the availability of the data, for example, in a trusted repository or accessible via an API. And I saw there were questions, for example, related to IIIF, the International Image Interoperability Framework. So that as an international standard is very interesting to the ECHOS consortium. So if that's what you're using, please feel free to share that when you describe your data sets. You may have existing licensing information available, and many people have asked about the sort of Europeana licensing frameworks. Yes, feel free to share any information you're using, or if you haven't got that information available, please tell us that as well, because this is an area of training and education, which is an important part of the ECHOS project. Here are a couple of questions that we just pulled out that came in the pre-selection. So is it expected that all provided data will be fully open, or is restricted access possible? And I see also in the chat, there was one about sensitive data, and this is where the care principles are. I think open access data is a lot easy to start with. So if your data is available as open access, however, you can still provide metadata, even if you have sensitive or restricted access to the data. So please share what the data is that you would like to share with us, and it would need to be, at least the metadata of the data would need to be openly accessible. At the moment, we're not providing any details of data exchange agreement. At this level of the stage, this is the first conceptual level of this call. But if you are using existing data exchange agreements, please feel free to mention them. And is open licensing mandatory for all data sets, or are more restrictive licenses such as CC by NC or non-commercial? Please feel free to write down what you already do and why you do it. So you may have a very good reason for already having non-commercial as one of the licensing. Just please explain why you would like to do that. And then on the next slide, this is going into, and I think we're back over to Johan to describe this in a little bit more detail, the budget now.
Yes, so yeah, so with respect to the budget, so there will be more detail we ask for the consortia that will be invited for the full proposal submission stage. So in the first stage of the review, that means that the amount of detail that we require is quite limited. And in the next slide, you see sort of the amount of detail that we require. So which is not a lot. So what we expect is for the people that will be working on the project to give their name and role. Obviously, this can still change as the project will evolve from stage 1 to stage 2, but to give some indication to the evaluators what kind of roles will be represented in the teams, what kind of organization will be, and then what kind of organization will be the employer of those people, and also the budget allocated per partner. And it's what we expect is to list both the personal cost and also the other costs. So what is that? So stage 2, there is a more detailed budget breakdown template that will be provided for the teams that will be invited to that stage. And then, well, we are expecting a bit more detail, but also not super extensive. If I compare it to other funding schemes. There were questions about the indirect cost, and the answer to this is that the maximum flat rate for indirect cost can be 25%. But this is all within the 60,000 euros of the total project budget. Also in the chat, there were questions about the duration of the project. So obviously, projects can only start when the grant agreement is signed, and we anticipate that this will be December, or if things are, or maybe January, but like I anticipate December this year, and that projects will have a duration of 12 months. We think that for an interdisciplinary project, this is a good duration. In case but 12 months is the maximum. And we also in the application form would like you to put in a number of milestones that we can use to keep track of process and progress. I'm sorry. Yeah, back to you, Sally.
Brilliant. And I think this has come up quite a lot So let's say firstly, connecting partners. And we've had a couple of questions coming out about matchmaking between partners. I think we discussed this in preparation for this call. I think this is a great idea. As some of you may know, Horizon Europe do matchmaking sessions between partners. This is not something we've anticipated for the data call. However, for the next call that comes up on engagement, this could be an interesting area to think about. So we will definitely think about for the next call, but not for this call. We've already got a lot of interest in this call. So I think we won't do any sort of connecting partnerships for this call, but we'll certainly think about it for the next call coming up. I think this has been addressed many times, and I saw the question in the chat, what means small and medium? We decided explicitly not to give a definition there, but we're thinking about sort of like institutions that may not have had the opportunity, because the cultural collaborative cloud should be really inclusive. So some institutions may not have had the opportunity to engage with European funding schemes previously. So I think that is what we're meaning here in particular. It hasn't come up particularly, but I think we've put the link in the chat, and it is also linked to from the application guidelines, is that all partners should be related to an eligible country. This is related to Horizon Europe. So this is EU member states plus associated countries. So there is a link to that in the application guidelines. We do say, and this is something that the Commission has been very keen, smaller and medium-sized institutions, or sometimes lesser resources, cultural institutions are especially encouraged to apply. This is particularly related to the second call, but I thought I would mention here as well, engaging with professional umbrella organizations. So I'm more familiar with the libraries world. So for example, we have LIBER, CENL, CRL. There are various umbrella organizations that may be active in your cultural heritage domain. If you can engage with them and sort of reach out to those also via your project, this would be another added value, because this all relates to how will the results of the project benefit the wider cultural heritage community. So I think that was the last slide on that. And now, evaluation, of course, one more there as well. This is another question that came up as well. So stage one, as Johan mentioned in the beginning, is about eligibility and the relevance to the call concept. So this is really at the concept level. So each of the proposals will undergo a thorough evaluation by a panel of 3 internal evaluators, and this is related to the eligibility and the alignments with the call. So this is what we'll do at the first stage. In the full proposal, we have a full range of eligible criteria. So relevance, which is weighted at 30%, impact at 20%, team quality, and again, this relates to the collaboration at 20%, justified resource allocation, so this relates to the budget, and sustainability at 15% as well. These will be peer reviewed by 3, 1 internal and 2 external evaluators related to these criteria, but this is at the second stage. And I saw a couple of questions coming up in the chat as well. So the 22nd of April is actually when the platform for submissions will be open, so you can start using it. The deadline is the 15th of May. So just to make sure there's no confusion, we are opening the platform next week, so you can use it, but the deadline is the 15th of May as well. So now I think we're on to the last, so we've allowed 15 minutes to have, for those people who can stay, to sort of answer some of those questions. I think we've had hundreds of questions into the chat, but if we can sort of answer some of those ones that weren't already covered in the actual session for those people who were able to stay. So maybe if I start with one, which is very important, and also for the inclusivity of the portal, accessibility guidelines. So as you all know, that website accessibility is really important, and it is a legal requirement as well in the European Union. So we will make sure that is one of the things that we'll be working on, to make sure that things developed in the context of the Collaborative Cloud for Cultural Heritage are accessible. But if some of the data sets that you want to provide have particular accessibility issues that you could be thinking about, please include more information about that related to your data set as well. Right.
Yes, Eddie, there's one question I'd like to pick up on, if that's okay.
Please, yes.
So we identify in our timeline the indicative project starting date. But there were some questions from Shanna and Nuran about that talk about perhaps it's better for some projects to actually start a little bit late because personnel might still need to be hired to work on the project. So I think the answer to this question is that so we hope to sort of conclude the process of writing the grant agreements by December, January. But if projects and that project start at the second quarter at the very latest. So to give them a few weeks to organize before a formal kickoff. So that means that as a project you can start, when the contract is signed, but you can also say sign a contract and then list in the contract that you would formally start in the second quarter, as long as your project is, the 12 months that we spoke about earlier.
And maybe I could pick up a second one, because this keeps coming back, and then maybe we can hand over to Dimitris to pick one related to technical and data that he would like to answer as well. So one of the questions that keeps coming up, because I know that many people are interested in potentially all the 3 calls, and this keeps coming up in the chat. So for example, if the maximum total amount that one single institution can be awarded is 60,000 euros. This is across all 3 of the calls. So I think that's really up to you to decide. So it could be that you decide, okay, from the 3 calls, the call 2 looks most interesting for my project, and put the whole 60,000 into that. Well, no, that's only 30, but to really focus on that particular call. So I think you as an institution need to think, where is our particular area of expertise, and how could we best spend this 60,000 across each of the different calls. I hope that kind of makes sense. So for call 1 and call 3, the maximum size of the projects are 60,000. Call 2, we will fund more projects, is 30,000. So as an institutional, you have to sort of see if you want to apply for all 3 calls. Say you put the 30,000 in call 1, and then you would only have 30,000 left to spread across calls 2 and calls 3. I don't know, Dimitris, if you've targeted a question that you might want to ask from the more technical data side, or we can go to another one if not.
I can make a quick general comment concerning data and eligibility. So there are no real restrictions in terms of format or in terms of semantic descriptions attached and so on. But in general, I would like to make a distinction between eligibility criteria and the criteria used to assess the proposal. So some things should be seen in that distinction. So not everything is eligibility related. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks for that addition as well. There are some questions related to these legal documents, and it is a bit of a tricky one, but I think if you go back to your institution, so for example, I work at a national library and I was thinking of that this morning. So, and here one of the questions was, what happens if we're a national museum? So sometimes it could be the different acts in the government that's established this, or it could be some statutes, or it could be a legal document. So I think you need to check back with your university, your cultural heritage institution to see what would be the best document. And if you want, you can always share that document in advance if you aren't sure. But I think it's really about proving that you are a legal entity. And then I just saw another one that I wanted to assess. So for example, this is a data set that consists of metadata only without the digital assets attached. Is that eligible for the call? So I think it's really important that you describe the use case and why this is going to help the cultural heritage community. So just looking at the questions that have come in. So for example, if you're looking at sort of data quality and related to sort of the authority of data and particular sort of named entities or something like this. I mean, if you describe the data and why you want to use it in full detail, this we can assess, so that it's not that metadata only cannot be assessed as well.
Yeah, one question is about if it's possible to hire staff specifically for this project, so like hire temporary staff for projects. The answer to that is yes, that's possible.
Brilliant. There's so many questions coming in. It's a bit difficult to sift through them. Maybe what we can say is as well, what we're going to do. So we had over 100 questions come in before, and the questions, what we'll do is save the chat and actually add those to the FAQs. And what we're going to do is try to cluster these so where they're more widely applicable to the wider community. So for example, if it's to do with open licensing, what we're going to do is try to cluster the licensing related questions and then provide an answer that relates to that cluster of questions, if that helps you all. The question that I saw was, how can we stay up to date with the latest developments of Echoes? We have a very well subscribed already newsletter, so I think this is probably the best place to stay up to date with the Echoes. Keep an eye on the website, of course, but the Echoes newsletter, and maybe Claudio could put the link into the chat of how to register for the Echoes newsletter. This is the way to stay up to date with the latest deliverables. Is there anything else that anybody would like to answer? Because there are so many questions, it's a bit overwhelming to choose them all. I think we are going to be processing them as soon as possible into the FAQ. But is there anything else any of the panel would like to add before we close up at the end of this session?
Maybe one thing, Sadie, so we will be indeed collecting, processing questions and making sure that all of them are addressed. In the meantime, if people in the call have specific questions, that they can also reach out by using the email address that's on our grant program page. So either be patient with us for, let's say, a few weeks, but also if you send an email, then we're happy to answer that as well. And indeed, as Sally mentioned, registering to the newsletter means that you will get updated by this and also upcoming calls. So that's always a good idea. Yeah, but that's it for me.
And also just to say, I'm sure most of you have taken a look at the guide for applicants already, but we saw a number of questions come and double now. We saw a number of questions through that are answered in that document. So do take a look. We know sometimes things need more clarity. So of course, ask those questions, but do take a look through that document, because we're sure it will really help give more insight into some of the things you're thinking about.
Brilliant. And Claudio was already, thanks very much. Claudio put the link to the newsletter into the chat. I think on behalf of all of us here, so Johan, Demetrius, Claudio, and all of the Echoes team, thank you very much for coming. Even we expected, even if over 360 more people registered, which we were expecting to get around 40%. Over 200 have stayed. 200, almost 225 have stayed until the end of the call. So this is really, really encouraging. So very best of luck. We're very much looking forward to your applications. Thank you for your interest. And this is really a unique opportunity to contribute to cultural heritage in Europe. So thank you very much for joining, and we'll look forward to your applications.